welcome to the Glitter Show with me, Gillian Godsall. Today, my guest is Jerry Chu, who is the founder and CEO of lofty.ai. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Gillian. It's great to be here.
No, I'm delighted to be here too as well, because I was reading your LinkedIn and you put in a quote or the sort of a dictate for life, if you like, from Andrew Carnegie. And it's really good what he says, and you live by it, and I love it. The first third of your life is for learning. Learn, learn, learn. Second third is to earn money, earn, earn, earn. And the last third, your final part of your life, is to spend that money on good causes. So that's a really, do you know what? It's a nice, because it's philanthropic. It's also dynamic, entrepreneurial, you know, all those things that you want to be, but with right thinking. So, and you read that when you were 16 years of age.
That's right. Yeah, it's those formative years when, as a teenager, you're kind of lost and confused about what do I want to be later in life? Like, what do I want my career to be? You know, you kind of start to think about like, what is my purpose? And just randomly, I've always been a voracious reader. So one day I came across that book, read it, and found out about how sort of Andrew kind of segmented his life. And it was so powerful for me because it was weirdly general enough, but specific enough at the same time where it felt like, hey, this is a concrete course of action, but not so specific where you felt locked in, like, go be a journalist or go be a teacher. And then it's like, okay, then, you know, you just have this one thing. It was broad enough where you could almost do whatever you wanted, but at the same time gave you this guidance and direction. So you didn't feel so lost, like, hey, what should I be doing in life? What should I be aiming towards? It gave you all the right sort of guidance where you're like, okay, I'm going in this general direction, and then whatever happens along the way happens along the way.
No, so cool. So tell me, what did you study in college then? The 16, you're obviously a big reader. What were your favorite subjects and what courses did you take in college?
Mostly the sciences, quantitative stuff. You know, in high school, I took all like AP biology, you know, AP physics, like all AP science courses, and math as well, right? So for undergraduate, my major was in math and economics, no surprise there. And so that's what I majored in. Always been pretty good with numbers, and it's just one of those things that you know, fascinates me, and I find very comforting because it's very logical. So there's like a right answer, you know, there's a problem and there is a right answer. You just need to get there. Whereas contrast that with the rest of life, and it's not always so black and white.
I totally agree. Totally agree. I'm more on the humanities side myself, always grappling with purpose and logic and reason. So tell me then, when did you first discover about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies? When did that enter your life?
Fairly young as well, actually. My undergraduate year, you know, for freshman year for my undergraduate study, so that would have been 2011. That was when people were still well, in fact, one of the only ways you could purchase Bitcoin was through Mt. Gox. That was like back then. And I remember I was in a fraternity, and one day there was a group of us who, you know, were all sort of computer science majors or sort of like in the quantitative field. And we were sitting at this long table having breakfast one day, and someone brought this up. And I was like, oh, have you guys heard about Bitcoin? You know, Mt. Gox, all of this stuff. So I really looked into it, and it was just such a fascinating concept. And I wanted to buy some at that moment, and it was such a, you know, frictional process. Like you have to go to like a Western Union to like wire funds into Mt. Gox. It wasn't friendly at all. And then there was like, apparently they had some issue with my ID because I was Canadian. There was just all sorts of things that came up which made that transaction not possible. So in hindsight, you know, I would have had a much better entry price had I gotten in at that time. But at the same time, chances are most of my Bitcoin would have been lost in the hack, or I would have lost all of this. So, you know, if there's comfort there. And then the second time I tried again, and this time was successful, was actually in 2013, 2014, roughly right when Coinbase was founded here in the US. And that all of a sudden was a game changer because it made it so much easier for people based in the US to actually use and purchase Bitcoin for the first time. So yeah, quite early on. You know, I don't want to brag, but my entry prices into all of the earlier crypto stuff was incredibly low. I think my average entry price into Bitcoin was around $200. Ethereum, I think entry price was around $18, and then Litecoin was like $10. So I got into this space very early on. But I will be fair to say that I was not a builder at the time. I was very young and wasn't really looking to go into this space. So I was more of a consumer.
So I'm imagining then, because you have a great faith in maths, or math, as you say in the US and Canada, so it was a pure mathematical build-up of Bitcoin that appealed to you. When did you start to get interested in, you said you weren't a builder, when did you get interested in like the other aspects of what the technology could do, not just the currency? When did that happen?
Well, that happened much later, basically 2020, 2021, I would say, during
Okay.
that time. Yeah. So it's been quite a few years since then. But yes, that was the original impetus of, the proof of work concept for Bitcoin. I thought was very elegant and extremely interesting. But it was actually my economics side that got me into it. And it was, not exactly the most sophisticated analysis, but I just remember actually the second time I got into Bitcoin was, and not necessarily for the best reason, but it was because I read about Silk Road, which, if you recall,
Yeah.
was this dark web online marketplace where people could buy all sorts of illicit things like drugs and weapons and things like that. And I remember reading that it only allowed for the transactions through Bitcoin, and also that it was doing these huge amounts of volume. And so for me, taking ethics aside, it was just kind of like supply and demand,
Yeah.
basic economics 101. And I was like, hey, a lot of criminals are currently conducting their commerce in cash, usually, US dollars in some form, which is cumbersome because, if you're transacting in large amounts, you would have to carry truckloads of cash, which is easily discoverable and not the safest way to transact. Like all of a sudden, Bitcoin comes along. It's proven by this online illicit marketplace. I have a theory that most sort of illicit activity will actually start transacting using Bitcoin. And I remember there was like a short blurb in actually an economics textbook in my freshman year, and it said something like an estimate of the black market in Italy, and it was something like $8 billion a year or something like that, maybe even more. And that was just in one country. So imagine the whole world. So my idea was, now imagine all of this economic activity, the people conducting it realize, hey, there's this thing called Bitcoin around, much easier. I can send millions of dollars worth of value essentially instantly, and it's fairly private. If people don't know who the wallets are controlled by, it's pretty good. So it's like, okay, most of them are, all that demand is going to come onto Bitcoin, and when you have more demand and limited supply, chances are prices will rise. So this is probably a good investment for the long term. That's
So
how I got into it.
that's when you became a drug dealer. Joke.
No.
That's when you. No, I'm messing. Sorry.
Benefited probably for some of their price activity, to be honest.
So that's so cool. You're right, because there's demand and supply. You're not commenting on the what the product is in that sense. So you could see that it was going to grow. And did you think it would take so long for the sort of almost the stigma of criminal activity to remain with cryptocurrencies? Are you surprised that people who are not in the industry still believe that line, that it's all criminals?
Yeah, it is still a little shocking to me because the industry has since then rapidly evolved. Lots of new blockchains have come out since then. Lots of new cryptocurrencies have come out since then. Um, you know, from one perspective, I do kind of understand those people. If you're not very involved with the industry, it is unfortunate in that there is a lot of get rich quick schemes, Ponzi, all sorts of illicit activity that is present in this space. And I think over time, more and more are getting filtered out through, regulation and prosecution by authorities, and also just the community itself kind of getting better at spotting something that is obviously a scam. So those things definitely exist, and there is a lot of it, unfortunately. So I can definitely see that perspective where someone isn't involved in the community will just take a quick look, and it's like, oh, well, I think a lot of this is a scam. But there's definitely some serious technology underpinning all of this stuff that is going to be very transformative for society. And there are seriously smart people building in this space that I deeply respect. And so that's the part I choose to focus on. It is very much a technology in its earlier sort of infancy, and there's going to be a lot of growth and development that comes in the next decade for sure. And I think eventually you will get mainstream adoption where people kind of forget about, oh, this is just for criminals, and you start focusing on the true utility of this technology. But it takes some time to get there. And in the meantime, I think you just can't it can't let it dishearten you, if you will, if you're a builder in this space.
Well, they do say build in a bear market, and we've had a bit of a tough year ending up with the FTX collapse. So it's not been maybe the best year in terms of PR for the industry. But again, people are building, and that's what you're doing. You're looking at property, but you have a different slant. It's not just tokenizing. You've got AI involved and stuff like that. So tell me a bit about lofty.ai, where the idea came from and why it's different from other property fractionalization sites.
Sure. So what we do is just in terms of our legal structure and ownership structure is quite different. So we are not a fund. We're not an investment fund, right? So most of tokenization businesses, the way they do it is essentially it's a group of people, and they create this fund. And if you're buying, fractions of these properties, what you're actually doing is you're giving money, you're investing into this fund, and you're becoming an LP or limited partner, which means you get benefits from the investment returns of this economic activity, but you don't have rights. Like, you do not get to decide which properties this group buys, right? You do not get to decide when to sell. You do not get to decide how it's managed. Basically, it's not your house. You're just a passive investor in this fund that happens to invest in properties and houses and so forth. And this one centralized group of people conduct all the activity. They decide everything. They have all the power. And so that's how most competitors in this space are structured. We're very different, where we have a more of a Web3 structure, if you will. So Lofty is a pure marketplace, meaning that every property you see on there isn't owned by us, right? We own 0% of it. We're not buying properties and flipping it to our LPs or our users. It's a pure marketplace, meaning that anyone can come to our marketplace and list a house for sale, right? Just people sell their houses. Some investors who are selling their properties on there, allowing one person to come together in purchasing that house. We will create a DAO for them, and will become owners of this DAO, and they will collectively pool their funds together to acquire the house they want to purchase.
Is that
and
a
after
DAO
closing,
per house? Is
the
it?
DAO, yeah, as a DAO per house.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
So that DAO will legally own the deed to the house. And so as a member of that DAO, as an owner of that DAO, you do legally partially own the house. And because of that, we don't actually manage anything for you, right? We're not acting as a managerial, in managerial capacity here. Instead, the DAO collectively votes on all decisions and how the property is managed. There is a third-party property manager that the DAO hires, right? Because you do need someone to physically pick up the phone call at 2 a.m. when the plumbing goes wrong at the property and the tenant needs someone to come fix it, or there's an emergency. So there is a third-party contractor hired by the DAO, but they work directly for the DAO. They don't work for Lofty. And beyond that, those people also have limited power. So when a big repair needs to happen, they need your permission. Like, do you want to fix this? Do you want to use this contracting company that we know we have an in-house contracting company? So all those decisions, and which bid to go with, the DAO actually votes on all those decisions. So that's really what fundamentally makes Lofty very different, is that we don't handle anything for you. Like, you're getting together with groups of people to buy properties that you want to buy for your own specific reasons and managing them as how you see fit. We're not the fund, right? So that's the main difference between us. As far as the AI component, we did originally launch a platform where we had an AI software that was basically going through and looking at every single property that was submitted to the marketplace, and it will pick certain neighborhoods that it thinks will grow faster in the near future in terms of price appreciation. And if a property met that criteria or was part of a neighborhood that it liked, it would tell our users that, hey, like, this property has higher growth potential in the future. But unfortunately, through the advice of our lawyers, we actually spun down that program. Again, we do not manage any properties. We do not want to be sort of seen as the facilitator. Like, we don't want to be influencing your investment decisions. If you want to invest in a property, it's because of the objective reasons and the data provided for that property, which, you know, you get appraisal reports, you get inspection reports, all the stuff you would typically see and order yourself anyway when you go out and buy a property. So all of those things are included for you. They're publicly available before you put in a single penny, and you do your own due diligence.
Who organizes the gathering of that data?
So you ultimately pay for it if the property closes. The DAO pays for it, but we're the ones that standardizes the listing criteria on our marketplace. So we say
So
to
someone
sellers,
comes to you with a property, and they say, I want to sell this property, and then you standardize, say, the information you wanted, the surveys report,
correct. We say you have to provide a list of these things, right? And if you don't, then we don't let you list on the marketplace.
So the person lists their house, shall we say, or condominium, whatever. Then you need enough people then to decide they want to invest. So are there enough people on the site already? Have any of these transfers gone through yet?
Oh, absolutely. We've tokenized over 130 properties today.
Oh, I didn't realize it was so advanced. Okay, so this is very interesting now. So someone comes along, they have a property. So this is not theory, this is real world. A property, provide all the documentation, goes up on the site, you clarify that, you verify that it's all above board, they own the property, blah. And then you have a community then of people who come in, who are already on the site. And how long has Lofty been going for?
About a year, a little over a year now, year and a half.
How did you attract all just through word of mouth, was it? How did you attract all the investors?
Yeah, it was all organic growth, even to date, because it is very much of a pain point for a lot of folks, not just here in the US, but also around the world. Real estate is one of the best asset classes for the creation and maintenance of wealth, and it's something quite well known amongst the general population. And the sad part is the vast majority of people can't access it because it's very expensive. It's a very legacy, outdated transactional process, so it's very annoying to deal with. And there's a huge lack of liquidity because, you know, you either buy the entire house or sell the entire house. And for something, even if it's a cheaper house here in the United States, where it might be, you know, $100,000, $200,000, it's still a huge chunk of money. You need someone to be able to come and either have a mortgage or have enough cash to buy the entire thing. And so not very liquid. So for those reasons, the vast majority of people can't access this asset class. And that's why you have a societal problem where the sort of rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, because you have asset prices growing at a rate that is much faster than wage growth. And that's just how our economy works now. And so to block off people's access to these assets that, you know, these people are the ones that actually need it the most, I think it's a huge problem for society. And that's why we're ultimately tackling this problem. And with a platform like ours, we're able to provide a solution where now anyone can come and the minimum amount of money you can put in is $50. And so literally anyone from pretty much any economic background, if there's a real interest in accumulating a real estate portfolio over time, they can now do that, right? But there's no upper limit. So, you know, if you do have a lot of money, you can still invest through this method. So it's very sort of free and opening for everyone. So it's extremely inclusive, but it doesn't block someone. It doesn't hinder anyone.
Okay, so I'm going back to the mechanics again, which are really interesting to me. So someone puts their house up, it's 200,000, shall we say. They have all the verified documents. Then people on the platform sort of opt in, say, I want to put in, and when you reach that magical number, the 200,000 plus fees, whatever.
Yeah.
What happens then? Is a smart contract, or is it? What's the process then?
It goes through a traditional title escrow process here in the United States, right? Because, you know, this is real ownership. This isn't funny money. It's not houses in the metaverse or anything like that. There's a real property. And so you will go through the traditional title process where a title company transact and closes and transfer the deed and records it with the local county office. And all of that is all properly done. And what ends up happening is the money gets sent to the seller, right? So they receive the money, the deed gets transferred under the DAO's name. So now you're a part owner. And during this time, while the property sort of accumulating interest or funding, if you will, from members of the DAO to build up its treasury, the money sits in a segregated bank account and just kind of sits there. And if it never reaches the funding amount, or if the seller, you know, it's their house to sell, they can come to us at any point in time and say, I changed my mind, don't want to sell anymore, right? They can pull the listing off. So if something like that happens and the contract is canceled, what ends up happening is we just refund people that have contributed up to that date, and everyone gets their money back. So it's a very easy, straightforward process.
So let's just say the transaction goes through. The DAO buys the property and pays the fees. Who appoints the lawyers to do that? Is that from your side? You appoint lawyers to do the conveyancing?
So in the US, the title company handles that. I don't think you need technically, you can go through a real estate lawyer as well. Both methods work, but the majority of the time people just use a title company.
Okay, so the DAO has bought this house, and do they then vote on what they want to do with it? They want to rent it, they want to sell it, flip it, another, whatever. So how does that work?
You can vote on whatever you want to do with it. The agreement, so every DAO sort of has an operating agreement, if you will. Basically, think of like an HOA and the bylaws, right? Like you're part of a condominium, you agree to abide by certain rules, right? And these rules can't be changed. So by default, the DAO also has a set of rules, and one of them is that this is meant to be used as an investment property, meaning that the DAO plans to rent it out and receive yield in the form of rental income, and that's what it does by default. But if the DAO wants to, right, if enough members are interested and you want to conduct a vote, you can change the purpose of the property. Maybe you don't want to, you just want to leave it empty. Like you're entitled to do that, right? You can, as crazy as it sounds, you can vote for one of the members to live in it. Maybe someone fell on hard times and everyone's like, oh, I feel bad. Like, let's just let them live in there for like 6 months. You can do that if you want to. It's literally collectively your house, so you can decide whatever you want to do with it.
So if you do rent it out, so you bought a nice house and you rent it out, presumably then you pay your taxes on the rental, and then is the idea that the rental income will generate a yield for the DAO owners, people?
That is correct. Yes.
And then if they do sell in a couple of years' time, they'll want hopefully the appreciation and the property price as well as the thing.
Correct. Yeah.
So someone's put in $1,000, and that's grand. They're getting some income and they're making money as opposed to not. I mean, hopefully the house hasn't got a major structural damage or a fault or something, or falls down, or they were. But see, that person needs to take their money out because they've got a child starting college, perhaps. How do they sell their share? How do they get their refund?
Yeah. So your ownership is sort of recorded and based off by proxy by these tokens that are generated on the Algorand blockchain. So this is where sort of the tokenization and blockchain aspect comes in. And you can sell those tokens at any point you want to someone else. They're yours to own. They're not. Yeah, you can do it through us. We make it easy. We have a secondary market where you can make bid and offers. It's kind of like a a marketplace. People are listing their tokens for sale at specific prices. People sometimes request to buy tokens at specific prices, right? So you can liquidate that way, but you can literally, again, it's yours to own. And so you can go around the street corner, and if someone's like, I'll pay you $200 in cash for this token, and you decide to transact that way, you absolutely can. Like, that's what people don't realize. It is yours to do with as you will. It's your asset. It's not ours. We can't limit it. So yes, there's an easy place to come and do it, but you can also do it over the counter. You can transact through family and friends. You don't really need our involvement.
Well, that's interesting. So, and is the secondary market quite liquid? I mean, or is it in real terms?
It's pretty liquid. I mean, relatively speaking, it's a fairly new concept, and it was only actually released in sort of September, like mid-September of this year. And so we've done about, on average, like $500,000 in volume on the secondary market since its release. So that's if you think about it, pretty good considering most of the properties are fairly cheap. Like a lot of these properties are $80,000, $100,000. So you're getting essentially on a monthly basis at least sort of a churn of 5 of these properties fully, right? And so for people who have a few $1,000s, it's been very easy to liquidate. Our internal analytics show that the average order can be filled within 2 to 3 business days. So, it's slow relative to the cryptocurrency market or even, stocks on a liquid stock exchange. But if you compare it to the status quo of the real estate industry, being able to sell your ownership in a house by yourself without using an agent and paying expensive fees and going through this process of leaving the house when the agent wants to show the house to sell, or like you don't have to deal with any of those headaches, and you can liquidate within 2 to 3 days on average. Like that's a huge improvement to the existing process. Some properties can take you months to sell, and so it's a huge gain for consumers that way.
Do you find this? You said that some of the prices are quite modest. Do sellers get more or better prices for their properties on Lofty, or kind of market rate? And do the buyers get a bargain or market rate?
It could be a mix of both. On average, it's probably market rate. That's the thing people need to realize. A marketplace just reflects market dynamics
Mm,
and what happens in a free market. Sometimes it just depends on people's motivation. Sometimes someone is extremely patient, has a really good asset that is extremely desirable. Well, they're going to command a high price for it. But the people who pay for it are happy to pay for it because clearly there's something about it that demands a premium that they're willing to pay. And then you have some people who really need the cash, or they're just in a situation where they want to just nothing to do with the property. Sometimes people inherit something from parents or grandparents and they're just like, I want the cash, I don't want to deal with this property and the headaches of maintaining it and managing it. So they're happy to take a haircut for faster liquidity, right? So it's on an individual basis, but on average it converges where there's buyers and sellers and their interests are not aligned. Sellers want to sell for as high as they want, buyers want to buy for as low as they want, and they eventually, for transactions to go through, on average they meet sort of at the midpoint, which is reflective of fair market price. So that's exactly what's happening here.
And then the property that's been listed on your site by individuals or companies, whatever, but it's only in the US, is that right?
Currently, yes, it's only in the US.
And is that because of compliance and stuff like that? Because you're even like the title company, properties are conveyed, undergo conveyancing different
Um,
countries, different countries.
yes and no. So yes, there's a lot of compliance, right? So there's real estate laws around everything for proper title transfers and things like that. But it's mainly actually because we're a US based company. So our team and our lawyers are most familiar with US rules and laws, and property rights and laws can be quite different from country to country. So
Mm.
we do have plans to eventually expand and offer properties in other countries as well. But for now, we're focused mainly on the US because that's the part where we have the highest confidence that, if something were to happen and this went to a court of law, right? Um, the judge would actually rule in our favor. There's precedent here in the US for that, where if you own the tokens to this DAO who then owns the property, the judge would consider you an owner in the property, right? The last
Okay.
thing we want is for there to be something missed, and in some country, the DAO goes to court, and it's like, oh, it turns out you spent all this money, but you don't actually legally own the property,
Mm.
even though you own these tokens in a DAO, and then like the government takes the house backward, gives it to someone. Like that would be a terrible scenario. And so we just don't want to expand too quickly to be able to miss something like that. We want to make sure that people who are transacting on our platform have the highest confidence in this mechanism for how things are done, for what the tokens actually mean, for how the deeds are transferred, etc.
And can, on the flip side, can people who use the site come from anywhere in the world, or they have to be US citizens?
So that part, they can come from any part in the world. Again,
Okay.
it's a legal thing. So you can legally own real estate in the US without being a US citizen or permanent resident and so forth. So because that act is legal, you can come from anywhere in
Okay.
the world.
So you mentioned Algorand. Why did you choose the Algorand blockchain?
Yeah, so there's quite a few reasons. Number one, it's a chain that will never fork, which is very powerful. And so for people who don't really understand that, sometimes blockchains, because they're open source and conducted by a group and built by a group, they sometimes come to a disagreement. And then half the group says, we want the technology to go this route. The other half says we wanted to go that route. And what they do is they fork, or basically create two new blockchains from the original one. And now you have two. If you were the owner of a token on the original set, you now have two sets of tokens, which is, if you're an investor and you're just investing in cryptocurrency, that might be even good for you because it's like you just got, more money out of nowhere. But if you think about what we're doing with these tokens, they're a record of ownership, right? So you can't, if the chain splits and all of a sudden you have two records, and you sold half of these records to someone else who ultimately owns the underlying DAO or the property. So that's a big no-no for us.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, Algorand is incredibly useful because of that. Then there's a secondary issue of transactions and the fees associated with that. So, you're buying and selling these tokens, you're receiving rental income, which we sent you sometimes through the blockchain as well. So you have the option, you can pull out your rental income in cryptocurrencies, or you can pull it out in dollars, right? And so forth. And for people that choose the cryptocurrency route, sometimes the amount is quite low because the rent is paid on a daily basis. And it's paid on a daily basis instead of a monthly basis as is the norm, to prevent what we call rental arbitrage, which is you don't want someone, let's say the rent is paid on the 15th of the month. You don't want someone to buy a bunch of tokens on the 14th, get all the rental income, sell it on the 16th, and then the people who own from the 1st to the 14th and people who own from the 16th to the end of the month receive zero income for being an owner during those periods. So it's extremely unfair in that way. And so we split the rent up and pay it out on a daily basis. So this way, if you own it for one day, it's fair. You're an owner for a day, you get 1 day's worth of rent as the yield, as the income. You own it for the whole month, you get the entire month's worth of rent, right? Pro rata to your ownership. And so by sending out the daily rental income, sometimes the amounts are very tiny on the blockchain. People are pulling out rent in the form of 2 pennies a day, or 3 pennies a day.
Because
and on certain
they've
blockchains,
tokenized, so it's not like the person could be paying 1,000 a month, but you've got to divide it up in all the owners. Yeah,
exactly. And so you have on certain blockchains, the gas fees are so high. If you were to send 3 pennies, you would be losing money on that transaction. And so for us, from a business unit economic standpoint, it doesn't make sense. Algorand, however, is extremely cheap in terms of transaction fees. So they're fractions of a penny. So literally in the basis points, right? And so what ends up happening is it's actually economic for us to send a single penny to someone through the blockchain. So for those main reasons, we chose Algorand. It makes the most business sense for us as a company.
And tell me, how does Lofty make its money then?
So just kind of like traditional real estate brokerage, really. And we do actually have brokers licenses to conduct business in the states and jurisdictions that we're in. So essentially, by listing the properties on our marketplace, we take a fee whenever a property successfully transacts, right? And so we take a fee from the buyers, we take a fee from the sellers, and that's how we make the bulk of our money. And on the secondary market, again, you don't need to use it if you don't want to, right? You can go to Reddit, you can go to any format. As long as you find someone willing to buy it, you can send the tokens to them wallet. You can transact however you want without paying any fees. But if you want the convenience to use the technology platform that we built, we earn income from that. So all transactions through the secondary market on Lofty, we make a percentage of the a fee there as well. So all combined, everything we do is just from transaction fees.
The people who are posting the houses, are they crypto people?
No, most of the property sellers are not crypto people. Sometimes they are, but most of the time they are not. In fact, it often confuses them. So, when they're listing, we don't even say like, oh, there's cryptocurrencies and Algorand. Just like, if you think about what someone selling a house actually cares about, is how much can I sell it for and how quickly can I sell it, right? And do I get, so these are all cash offers. There's no ability to get a mortgage right now or leverage it up. So it's something that sellers really like because cash offers always close as long as, the buyer wants to close and go through the contingency period. So it's more certain. So that's really fundamentally all they care about. And that's what Lofty provides them. You get to list for whatever price you want. If, there's, again, appraisal reports. So if you list too high, people aren't going to buy it. There's so much data that's free on the internet. Like people will go on Zillow and all sorts of property sites to do analysis on their own to be like, to think, if this house is worth that amount of money. So people are able to do the diligence for sure. And if you list too high, you just won't sell, right? If you list too low, you'll sell for sure very quickly because everyone's like, I'm getting a great deal. But you get to dictate your own price as a seller. You can sell extremely quickly because, that's just sort of the nature of liquidity here. Once you open it up so that people can put sort of any amount of money and pool their funds together, you get a lot more liquidity. an extreme version is some of these properties have sold in 8 seconds. Like
Wow.
from the moment it was listed in 8 seconds, it was completely filled. And if you're wondering how people can do their due diligence in 8 seconds, the way it actually works is the property gets listed on the site, and for 24 hours, you can't buy it. It's just there. All the documents are there. You can read about it. You can learn about it, but you can't actually invest or purchase it. And then when that timer is up, you can purchase it. So people did their diligence in the prior 24 hours. But yeah, some have sold in 8 seconds. And so for a seller who, sees that, they're like, oh, I get an all cash offer, at the price that I wanted. And I sold it, like I can close within a week, right? So that's just an objectively better mechanism than what they would be able to get going out onto the public market using the MLS or using agents here in the US.
That's huge. So tell me again, you've done 120 properties, or they are going through the system so far?
We've done 130 properties already. Yeah.
Wow. Next year, what's going to happen next year? Is it going to get bigger and better, or what are your plans?
Absolutely. So continue to grow, continue to get bigger and better, continue to fulfill our mission to, provide value to retail investors, give them access to an asset that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get. But we're also implementing a lot more blockchain and Web3 features into the product that will be helpful to everyone. One of the things we'll be launching is called an automated market maker. So essentially right now on the secondary market, you have to list very specific prices. So that's, in traditional trading, you'll call that limit order. So you dictate like, I want to sell this token at $50. I want to sell at $51. I want to buy at $53, whatever may be the case. But if anyone's ever used a trading app or have a stock brokerage account and used crypto before, you'll often see there's a market price, right? So it's just a price that if you decide to sell at that, it will pretty much go through instantly. And so currently on our platform, that doesn't exist because there is no market maker. And what we're going to do is launch an automated one, which is just an algorithm that is constantly buying and selling tokens, right? Making the market a lot more liquid and generating a market price. But traditionally, a market maker is typically a large bank, like an investment bank, a hedge fund, or something like that. They have their own capital at risk, so they're using their own money. And in exchange for using their own money, the market maker usually always makes a profit from market making, right?
Yeah.
So that's how they make a return on their money. So in this case, we will not be contributing funds ourselves, and there is no centralized market maker. So we don't have a hedge fund or a bank working with us. Instead, we're going to allow just people to contribute liquidity. So anyone can come and say, I want to put in some monies into this liquidity pool that the market maker can then use to do the market making activity. And in exchange, I will get a portion of the market making fee, the revenue that it generates. And so we'll allow that activity. And so this way is a purely decentralized and peer-to-peer way where there are people providing liquidity for market making, and there are people who are buying and selling the tokens who benefit from this liquidity and so forth. So it's this ecosystem where it's completely driven and powered by everyday people, no large institutions involved, and all the economic activity generated goes back to the people, the vast majority of it. We will obviously take a fee, but our fees are very transparent. We always tell people exactly what we take, and it's always a very minute percentage, so that the vast majority of economic activity generated goes back to the people who are actually taking on the risk and supplying the capital and so forth. So things like that are in play for 2023. That is simultaneously going to provide another mechanism for people to essentially grow their capital and grow their wealth, and at the same time improve the existing platform and the process so that there's more liquidity on the secondary market. So implementing things like that. So
you said one of your baselines is that people can take control of their own wealth, and using real estate is one of the best asset classes in the world. So do people, I'm not asking for financial advice, but do people then dip in and out of lots of different DAOs as opposed to go into one? If you say someone has $1,000, are they better off to put it in 10 different pots of 100 each, or to put it all in one pot?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on your personal sort of convictions. And, usually when people invest, they sort of have a belief, right? Like, for
Mm.
example, if someone were to go buy shares in Tesla, it's because they believe maybe that the company will do really well in the future, right? They have some sort of opinion and belief about the market, right? Very rarely do people say, I have no opinion, and then they still invest money. Usually when people do that, they want to be extremely passive. So maybe they're buying index fund in the entire stock market. I just want exposure. I don't really care about alpha or anything like that. And so Lofty is the same way. So we have different users with different risk criteria, with different levels of capital. So there are people that come in and say, I want exposure, period, right, into single family housing. And so there's those people, and they'll buy small portions every single property. They'll spread across their risk so that, if something were to happen at one property where a tenant doesn't pay rental income for a month, it happens, they go delinquent, you're not losing all of your income. Proportionally, you're losing maybe 1% of your typical expected income on a monthly basis. And properties do require maintenance. So like you said, sometimes 5 years, 6 years down the line, a roof may need to be repaired or something like that. And again, you're not at huge risk of that because all of your money is in this one DAO, only one property. So there are people who prioritize that. The downside to that is, again, you're just overall exposed to the market, right? You don't get any additional alpha. Your return becomes an average return of what's available on the marketplace. And then you have people who are a lot more opinionated and specific, and they're willing to take bigger risks. And so what they do is they'll put in the majority of their money into one or two or three, sort of a smaller basket of properties. And they'll focus on properties that they think will have the highest yield, will have the highest appreciation returns in the near future. And so they'll think they're putting more of their money to work on the best properties that can give them the highest financial returns. So if they're correct in that opinion, that's exactly what they get. They make more money, relatively speaking, than someone who's better diversified. The downside is they also have more risk. If they're just extremely unlucky and something bad were to happen to 3 of the properties on the marketplace, and it just happens to be the 3 properties that they own, and they own large percentages of it, well, then they have more money at risk, right? And so it is very much a balance of risk and reward and what people are willing to tolerate. But again, the goal of our platform is to just provide you flexibility so you can decide what you want to do and then execute on that, right? Some platforms are just restrictive. They don't, it's either like minimum investment is $10,000. You don't even have a choice, really. So for us, just opening it up, if you want to concentrate more of your money in a single property, you can. If you want to diversify more, you can, right? There's just no restrictions, and whatever you think is best for your own financial well-being, you get to execute on that.
Tell me, do you produce reports then, like with all the data that you're capturing on the site? Do you provide reports saying that houses in this area have done this, or returns of this? Do you do anything like that for your?
We don't project reports because we want to be, in sort of as the maintainer of technology and the marketplace, we want to be objective and unbiased, right? Again, we don't want to sway opinions. We don't want to project our own subjectivity onto the investments for people. And so there are third parties. So we use a company called House Canary, and they generate reports on every single property on a monthly basis.
Okay. Yeah,
and
so
that report
data.
includes information like, oh, how many properties have sold? What are the comparable prices? They project what they think the property will appreciate by in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, something like that. So all that data is available. It's just that, and we present it, we provide it on the platform, but the data doesn't come from us. We don't generate it for you.
Okay, so my final question for you today, it's very impressive, very well thought out, very measured, very, it's interesting. I really like it. What are you going to spend your money on? What good causes are you going to spend your money on when you've made your millions?
Yeah, great question. Most people actually don't ask this. For me, it's mostly like animal welfare. I'm a huge lover of animal. I have 3 dogs, and so probably a lot of dog shelters and sort of causes along those lines. Maybe I'll start my own, shelter. I've always liked, you see on those videos, like sometimes people have an animal sanctuary where they rescue animals, including dogs, cats, and all sorts of funky stuff like bears and horses and cows and whatever. So I love animals. So something like that in the future would be brilliant. And I think, you know, there's a lot of successful people in the world, and I looked at their you know, their contributions in the space, and most contribute to causes for humanity, which is a good thing. So there's already a lot of money flowing into those things, but I've noticed a small proportion of that goes towards sort of animals, and so you know, I think I can even it out a bit more.
Brilliant. I love your answer. And I love the fact you're thinking about it now, which means that the chances of doing it are much stronger because you're planning for it. It's not just a
Yes,
wishful thing. So that's
absolutely.
really cool.
I already do small donations here and there, but
Yeah.
you know, not enough to be a game changer. But I'm excited for hopefully one day it will be. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm very impressed, Jerry. I'm so glad we had our time together. I could talk for a lot longer, I think, but I'll stop now because my time is up. But thank you so much for your time, and I wish you every success with lofty.ai. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jillian. Thanks for having me here.